Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Foreign Correspondent Club of Thailand. My name is Panu Wongcheum, a senior correspondent with Reuters and the current president of the Foreign Correspondent Club. Today, we're going to have a remarkable panel on driving post-COVID economic recovery as APEC host 2022, a look at Thailand's as this year APEC's host. On 12th of November 2021, Thailand accepted the Waka Paddle from New Zealand, symbolizing the official handover of the hosting duty of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC. As host, Thailand has outlined its visions and priorities for APEC in 2022 under the theme Open, Connect, and Balance. This is a challenging year, and APEC appears to be an important international and multilateral economic platform, and of course, a very big year for Thailand. Comprising of 21 economies in the Asia-Pacific and roughly 38% of the world's population and 60% of the world's GDP, it will be quite a task for APEC to maintain trade openness in a world reeling from economic devastation during an ongoing pandemic. The current backdrop of recent isolationist tendencies, heightened competition, and evolving alliances, as well as rising geopolitical tensions, like what we're seeing evolving in the Ukraine or South China Sea right now, also set important tests for APEC and the international order. We will hear from our distinguished panelists today about how will Thailand, as this year's host, advance APEC economies towards inclusive and sustainable growth, restore connectivity, assist in the recovery of countries and businesses. But before we start, I would like to briefly invite Director General Thani Sangrat from the Foreign Ministry to come up and say a few words. Thank you, Thani.
How about a hand for Kun Panu from FCCT. I would like to thank FCCT, the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, and the members of the press corps, members of the diplomatic corps for joining us. Welcome once again to FCCT. We are co-partners, and we want to thank our guests from Department of Trade Negotiations, from APEC, APEC Business Advisory Council, DG of the Economic Department himself, Mr. Cherchai, and we also have a member of the SME business that we want. The reason that we want to make good use of our host as APEC is that we want to make good use that we want to make sure that our businesses in the region and in Thailand do benefit from us being the host of APEC this year. So I want to welcome you once again to FCCT, the place where they have the best fish and chips if you haven't had one. So please join us. We are live from FCCT, and we are live from our Facebook from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you so much, Director General. Just a piece of housekeeping before we start. Those of you at the end, we have some time for Q&A. You can come up to the microphone at the back of the room and ask questions there. For those of you who are watching online on various platforms, you're welcome to send in your questions on the FCCT Facebook Live as well as on the MFA platform. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists, as Kun Thani has already did, but just officially. From the far right, we have Kun Acharaya Thamparipatra, the CEO and co-founder of Hive Stars. And then next to her, we have Kun Chananya Bantukun, Executive Director of the Bureau of America, Pacific Affairs and International Organization from the Ministry of Commerce. And then, of course, we have Kun Cherchai Chaivavit, Director General of the Department of International Economy. And last not least, next to me is Kun Kasemsit Patomsak, the Deputy Secretary General of the Board of Trade and the alternate member of the APEC Business Advisory Council. Welcome all of you to the FCCT นะครับ I think we would like to start with the Foreign Ministry. Kun Cherchai, can you tell us a little bit about what is installed this year for Thailand as hosts, I mean, the broad picture as well as the particulars, what can we expect from Thailand APEC year,ครับ?
Thank you very much, Kun Panu. And before I do that, let me just give you very quickly what APEC is all about, where we are in terms of priorities that we have been talking about in the past 20 years or so. You can see that, of course, the key date of APEC is 1994, the Waka Goals, which is the main element, the main driving, the main target of the APEC process. Waka Goal is nothing so much about everything else except trade and investment liberalization. And we did set the target of 2020, the year before, as the year that APEC will be basically trading without tariff and tax and so on. We didn't achieve that, obviously, but fast forward to 2006, we set off another vision in addition to Waka Goals, that is to achieve free trade area of the Asia Pacific, or FTAP. We are going to talk about FTAP later on this evening. Fast forward to 2020, the Putrajaya vision, of course, Waka Goals ended in 2020, and we needed something to continue our work. So economies, APEC economies, member economies, worked on another set of long-term vision targets, and that is Putrajaya vision. In fact, the name is Putrajaya Vision 2040. So it is going to be another 20 years for APEC to realize the core element of our aspiration, that is to have a common trade investment community as much as possible. Last year, economies came back, revisited Putrajaya vision, and we agreed on a set of action plans to move to make sure that we meet our 2040 target. That came out our plan of action under the host year of New Zealand. So this is a rough kind of timeline where we are right now in APEC. Next slide. This is important for us. Around 2 years ago, we started, among, of course, Thai agencies, academics, stakeholders, private sector, member of the media. We talk about what should be our deliverables when we are going to host APEC in 2022. What would be the core elements of our engine driving forward? The interesting thing that we talk about is APEC is no longer a forum where we can just only talk about trade and investment, where we can only just talk about regional economic integration or just connectivity or multilateral trading system. There are many more elements, and you can see that emerging issues like the climate change is part of the package of today's conversation. we are talking more and more on things like digitalization, how to integrate digital technology into the mainstream of APEC conversation. Of course, trade investment, business facilitation, inclusive sustainable growth are still the main part of the story of the APEC narrative going forward. Now, 2022. Of course, next slide, please. Hosting APEC in 2022 is very tricky. It's a difficult business for all APEC economies to find our real direction. What would be the main narrative? What would be our main narrative of all the APEC conversation? Critical juncture, if you may. COVID-19, and the world is not really in a good place. Trade fragmentation, disputes here and there, and you see competition among certain major economies. So we look at it, and we feel that our main focus should be perhaps a two-pronged kind of approach to make sure that APEC will be the main engine in driving forward economic recovery in the Asia-Pacific region. This is important, need not to say. And the other element is for us to make sure that our Thai people and the business and the Thai business benefit from this dynamism that will take place sooner or later after the COVID-19. So we need to make sure that we strike a good balance between driving the APEC and making sure that our business, our private sector can benefit from our APEC host year. So those are the two kind of direction that we place very high importance to. So now, next slide. Let's see. On the second element, you need to look at the Thai economic, I put it as economic diplomacy. But the thing is, and this is what we keep telling the government. We started telling the government right after COVID-19 that 2020 onwards is not going to be like that. The scenario that we used to work with before. There will be economic fragmentation that Thailand needs to address. We need to put ourselves in the right place and make sure that Thailand continues to be an impactful player in this region. We need to make sure that we are in the game as far as digitalization is concerned. We are in the game as far as innovation is concerned. And most importantly, the question of sustainability. We have no choice but to refocus, to readdress what Thailand can bring forward to make the Thai economy attractive to the rest of the region. Okay, this is the Thailand context that we are focusing on. And then next slide. But we are not doing that very well as far as environmental, as far as other challenges are concerned. There are good news, not very good news. Our rankings in terms of um, dealing with pollution, dealing with marine debris, dealing with a lot of stuff, are putting Thailand in a disadvantaged position as far as competitiveness is concerned. You look at the number of deforestation in Thailand, and the figure is not very impressive, I'm afraid. Sustainable Development Report 2021, we are ranking, at 43. We should have done better. Environmental Performance Index 2020. Our ranking is not that impressive. There will be a lot of questions going forward that, where is Thailand? We used to be in a good place. We used to be, a strong Thailand, back in the 80s, early 90s when I joined the Foreign Service. But now we need to do something about our own economic engine. And then we look at the Asia Pacific. A lot of problem also, at the bigger picture. COVID-19, inequalities, imbalances in the way that we live, in the way that we do business. The very imbalance of, in between living things and nature. And this situation is not encouraging when we factor in things like COVID-19, which is, a result of the imbalance between the way that we deal with the environment around us. That's why we have been talking about introducing biocircular green agenda as economy agenda as our main kind of main concept in driving this APEC host year. You are already familiar with open, connect, and balance. This is what we structure, what our APEC host year should look like. I cannot promise for sure, come November, that we are going to achieve any of this. But this is a structure. This is the structure that we are working on. This is structure that the first senior officials meeting in February will talk about. And we are going to introduce a lot of thoughts, ideas, initiatives during that conference. Open to all opportunities, for all parts of society to benefit from the free and open trade and investment. Connect is basically to enhance connectivity in all dimensions. This is very clear. We have been disconnected for the best part of the last 2 years. Thailand is chairing a temporary task force driving this safe passage agenda for the next 10 months. We are going to come up with a set of recommendations, a set of rules, a set of systems that APEC on a voluntary basis can perhaps join hands and make sure that at the start of, say, 2023, we will be better connected ever than before. Of course, the number of international traffic might not be as big as pre-COVID-19, but we want to make sure that we are coming back stronger and more sustained than before COVID-19. And lastly, balance is of course to to bring this biocircular green narrative into the superhighway of the APEC conversation, to make sure that we are not going to focus about profit maximization conversation only, but just talk about something else, how to recycle, how to address the biodiversity, and how to make ourselves greener, how to make our business greener, and how to make sure that all parts of our society, play their role in moving things forward. So that is pretty much the structure that I would like to introduce. And lastly, I know that there will be a few more speakers after me. Just let me skip quickly and go to the last segment of my presentation. All right. This is what we are planning to drive in 2022. Of course, there will be the main APEC engine, senior officials process. Starting from February, then May and August and November, so on and so forth, there will be a big conversation on the finance cluster. Stuff like green financing, how to make sure that businesses at micro, small, medium enterprises can have better access to finance, that kind of thing. Trade Minister, of course, my colleague from Commerce Ministry will go into detail. We are going to have the Asia Pacific, basically ministers responsible for trade meeting in May, and that will be one of the main highlights of our APEC host year. There will be stuff that we are going to discuss about. And of course, the summit itself, the CEO summit, ministerial meeting, and of course, the leaders' dialogue with all the stakeholders. We are going to talk about health. There will be ministers' conference on health. There will be ministerial conference on food, forestry. Ministers in charge of tourism will meet in Bangkok in August, and MSMEs, of course. And last but not least, ministers responsible for women, which has been, a big part in the APEC process, in the APEC conversation. This will feature in the APEC process this year as well. My last presentation is about the upcoming senior officials meeting, or someone in February. There will be a 3 weeks worth of meetings at different levels. The highlight will be, of course, the Safe Passage Task Force. We are going to consider proposals from APEC economies, how APEC members can come up with a set of recommendations, a set of common directions that we are going to make by November. How can we integrate existing infrastructure system as far as digitalization, health certificate is concerned, to make sure that there will be less hassles, as far as travel is concerned. So that is going to be the first highlight. Secondly, policy dialogue on promoting biocircular green economy. And of course, the SOM plenary itself. So yeah, that's pretty much. I'll stop there, and we'll be very happy to answer your questions after this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kap, Director General Church Chai. Very interesting, broad overview of what's installed, and the conversation is very big indeed in so many areas. Now we go into the nuts and bolts, I guess, of how APEC started in terms of trade for our next speaker. Kun Chananya, can you tell us more about what's installed in terms of sort of this focus on sort of trade, going forward into this APEC year?
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, distinguished guests. Okay, so let me share you the background of how APEC would help in terms of promoting trade and investment. For Ministry of Commerce, we are representatives under the Committee on Trade and Investment under the some level under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Actually, there are quite a few core issues in the APEC agenda on promoting trade and investment. So let me begin on the wider picture for the role of APEC in the multilateral trading system. Of course, the APEC role is to continuously support the rule-based multilateral system, the negotiations under the WTO, which cover, for example, there are issues like negotiations on e-commerce or negotiations on domestic regulations in services sector, which finally was be able to conclude it. And also there are emerging issues like trade and health with the COVID-19 situation. And this trade and health issue under WTO includes, for example, like dealing with the supply chain of the essential goods or the intellectual property issues in terms of, for example, vaccine. So APEC remains the vivid supporter of the MTS. So this is one of the core issues under the Committee on Trade and Investment. In terms of the regional economic integration, like Tan Choi Chai has mentioned, the regional economic integration is one of its core under the APEC in terms of working towards the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, or FTAP. Actually, I think this initiative was introduced since like 2004. And it has been progressing in terms of there are a lot of plans and initiatives. So let me go back a little bit. For example, in 2016, there was a Lima Declaration on the FTAP, and as a result of that, through CTI, or Committee on Trade and Investment, and its sub-fora, more than 120 initiatives under the CTI's FTAP work program has been introduced. And actually, FTAP has also been put under the APEC Putrajaya Vision 2040 and Altera Plan of Action, as mentioned before, under the Ministry of Commerce. Under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the FTAP will remain our core issue under the APEC, but as time passed, there are a lot of new generation trade and investment issues that have been emerging over the years, and there are currently discussion among APEC economies on several key elements that could be integrated into the FTAP. For example, like labor and state-owned enterprises, environment, inclusiveness, and sustainability. So these are the emerging issues that are starting to be discussed under the FTAP. Of course, there are still divergent views among the economies on which level or on how high the standards of these issues could be integrated into the FTAP. But these issues are being interested or are discussing among the trade officers under the APEC. So this is kind of new development so far for the FTAP. But for the Thailand's hosting year, the discussion of the FTAP, of course, will be revisited, and it will be one of our deliverables, in particularly when we look at FTAP with the new lens of the COVID-19. So what we intend to seek from the APEC's ideas and thoughts of how regional economic integration architecture should be reshaped under the new paradigm, especially after the pandemic. So it is very important that to emphasize that the FTAP, as it is an economic-driven process, so it should be built on the APEC's consensus and APEC's ideas. So what we are going to revisit it on discussion on the FTAP in our hosting year is how you view the FTAP. How do you view the emerging issues under the FTAP when there are pandemic living with us? This is what we are going to introduce into our activities this year. And what we are going to do is that we are going to encourage the APEC economies to open the discussion on this kind of thing. We are not going to launch in the negotiations, but we hope that the discussion will open the new perspective on the FTAP with the current situation. We are planning also to have the dialogue between the Ministry of the Ministers of Trade and the APEC. So we are going to have a session on the public-private dialogue, and we are going to introduce this kind of a question. So to initiate the discussion between Ministers of Trade and for the APEC. So kind of it's a public-private dialogue. So, and we are also, maybe we are going to organize a symposium during the MRT meetings in May. But this is what we want to do is that we want to educate the Thai officials or even the public on FTAP, because FTAP has been here a very long time, but it's not well known like other FTAs. And what we want to have as a result is at least we initiate the discussion. So if possible, maybe we will have kind of the information paper, as a result of the discussions under the MRT and the MRT is the Minister Responsible for Trade, and the APEC, which is a public-private dialogue. So this is what we heading for. And let me add a little bit, because I don't know whether I should say it right now, but because your question that direct to me is that how it would contribute to the MSMEs. So what the role of the APEC that would contribute to MSMEs? I think there are two important issues. We recognize the role of the e-commerce that would help the enabling the MSMEs to integrate into the global supply chain. So actually, under the discussion, whether under the current work under the APEC or even under the FTAP, we put our importance on to advance the role of the e-commerce that would, or the role of the digital that would enable MSMEs that to integrate into the global supply chain. And there is also the role of the promoting MSMEs to develop or to adapt their production into the BCG model to reach the, to attain the sustainability. And In this occasion, we are planning to have the APEC symposium, of course, during the MRT meetings in May. This meeting, the symposium is called the APEC Best Practices for Green and Innovative MSMEs by using BCG model. This symposium will be partly sponsored by the APEC Secretariat. And what we want to see, we would like to support MSMEs through introduction the MSMEs into the sustainability concept. And this will help their, to enhance their resilience in the post-production, in the post-pandemic era, so that MSMEs can integrate into the supply chain and be able to survive in the long run. So this is the introduction. So I will end this at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kun Chananya. I know that we've been talking from two officials already in terms of the broad prospect of APEC and also on the various issues concerning trade and integration, regional integration. But of course, we can't talk about APEC without talking about the private sector. I want to go next to Kun Kasem, sit next to me, to talk a little bit about sort of the activities of APEC Business Advisory Council, and also, I mean, what's the general expectation as well from business? You know, this is 2 years on since the pandemic. We've seen supply chain interrupted. We've seen the rise in costs of shipping containers, et cetera, et cetera. I cover these stories all the time. I want to hear from you what are the expectations and what can APEC do to improve on the problems that we have so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Kun Paddle. Thank you, FCCT, for having me here. It's very honored to join this panel, and very excited to share my excitement here on what we're doing at APEC. Well, for some of us who are not too familiar, APEC is the APEC Business Advisory Council. If I may allow to take this, it's blurring my glasses. It's so we have basically the private side of the APEC discussions. So our main mandate is to try and make advice and make recommendation to the APEC leaders at the summit on things that would impact us. Because on the private sector side, all 20 economies get together and we discuss and deliberate on some of the key issues that will be going into the discussion at the Leaders Summit. For Thailand, we have we have 5 members of APEC, and it comprises most of the private sectors here in Thailand. We have the chair, which is the Kun Supan, which is the chair of the Federation of Thai Industries. We have a representative from the Board of Trade of Thailand, Dr. Pot. We have a member from the Thai Bankers Association, the Secretary General, Kun Kopsak. And we have 2 alternate members, one from the FTI and one is myself from the Board of Trade and the Thai Chamber of Commerce. We divide our work into a few priorities that we want to focus on. And this is an ongoing work that we discuss every year, and we have made a lot of progress, but this I would say a rather long-term discussion, and it needs to be pushed from the 21 economies that we are working on at the working group levels through the different countries and governments agencies to get through. So the issues that we has been highlighted here from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Commerce, issues that we work in tandem on the private sector side. We have divided into 5 main working groups. We call them the 5WG. The first one is the regional economic integration working groups that is dealing with issues like FTAF that we heard here, FTA, APEC, Asia Pacific. We are pushing for the WTO reform. As we all know, the WTO is clearly not functioning as they are designed to, and I think we are helping to push that from the private sector side. We are on this working group. We are also pushing for the reopening of borders. Because we have been disconnected, we have been grounded for the past 2 years almost. So we want to try and formalize some kind of standards and procedures where the 21 economies to start with can begin to open up their borders and reconnect and get the travel going post the pandemic. And also on that, we have the post-pandemic trade policy. We want to make sure that this is not going to be our last pandemic. What do we do in the next one? How do we, different economies get together and come up with a plan that is can be put into action right away? So that's on the REIWG, the Regional Economic Integration. We have a sustainability working group that is dealing with climate change. We are working towards the net zero economy. We're dealing with heavy issues like food security, food safety, food standards. These are very pertinent issues, and it's become clear since this pandemic that instead of having the food supply chain as the way it used to be, you have to plan for an alternative route, and you cannot rely on the chain, because once there is a problem, the chain doesn't work as it used to be. Instead of one of those just-in-time delivery kind of, it becomes a just-in-case kind of a scenario where many countries have to plan for. A lot of economies are not self-sustained, not self-sufficient in food and a lot of supplies, and they need to rely on how do we zero in on some of these issues. We also discuss on renewable and green energy, which is also very up and coming and very hot. On the MSMEs and inclusiveness working group, we push a lot on the ease of doing business, capacity building for MSMEs, which the speaker from the Ministry of Commerce has touched on. I think we're working very closely hand in hand on that. We are pushing for a platform for supply chain, whether it's a kind of a digital platform or some kind of a setup where ease of trading can be achieved. So that's on the MSMEs and inclusiveness working group. We have a digital working group that is working on the APEC single window. We have a different platform that are being developed right now, and we are hoping to expand the digital economy into the different economies that we are within the APEC. And the last one is the financial and economic working group, which is dealing with macro, fiscal, monetary measures and finding new policies to recover from this 2 years break. For the theme from the government side, as you can see, is open, connect, and balance. On the APEC side, we have the theme that we develop in tandem and hopefully complement with the government theme, which is embrace, engage, and enable. So as we know, we'll be pushing the BCG economic model under the Thailand Championship year this year. And I think it's very important to understand, to at least make people aware and understand that BCG is the way forward. And Thailand wants to champion this. We focus on sustainability, inclusiveness, economic development to the economy, society, and the environment. I think we need a balanced approach. And some of these key sectors that Thailand has been very strong on: agriculture and food, wellness, medicine, energy, material, renewable material, biochemicals, tourism, and creative economy. These are all key industries for Thailand that are just poised to upgrade themselves to take on and embrace the BCG economic model. So, for example, tourism. I think tourism is one of the good examples that Thailand would like to champion. And tourism, in fact, touches on literally every sector that we talk about, whether it's MSMEs, digital, local, inclusiveness, sustainability, tourism. And we want to find some form of standards. In fact, this past 2 years has been a breather year for tourism, since the world has been grounded. We have a chance to look at how things should be redone and not done the same way as before, and we need to use a new model for tourism, eco-friendly tourism, net zero, zero waste, kind of tourism. And we need, more importantly, to include the local community in most of the tourism development, using local products, using the local know-how, and you want them to be engaged in the process of developing some of these new sites, some of these models for tourism where they will benefit and they have a say and know what they will be benefiting or what are they losing. So energy will be also a next sector under the BCG, and we see opportunities where private sectors needs to upgrade. Energy, as we all know, the whole environmental issues has been very close. It used to be something that we think is very far from us. It's something very beyond our reach, and we will probably not see it. But it's right here and now, and we see it every day now. We see an extended winter. We see a bizarre winter snowstorm in parts of the world that never even experienced some of this on a regular basis now. So I think these are things that Thailand has actually a good base to develop on, whereas a broad-based products on bio-based, bioplastic, carbon-based material. These are things that we have already on the ground, and we can make use under the new economic model to try and bring the new opportunities for the SMEs and even for corporates. So, waste is going to be a big issue, and we are now finding ways to treat waste, electronic waste, bio waste, hazardous waste, and these are all new opportunities where I see, discussion at APEC will create opportunities for businesses going forward in the future kind of model. So as you can see, BCG may sound like a concept, but it's not. It's actually something that is very relevant and relatable, and all businesses should be able to understand this and embrace this economic model and upgrade the kind of things that they are doing, the process that they are doing, the kind of customers or the supply chain that they are working with, to try and upgrade the entire business model that they are working on into the BCG model. So we hope we pushing under our chairmanship year to make the APEC communities aware, first of all, and hopefully get them to commit and have some action plans based on this model going forward. So if you say that some of these discussions are very far, very beyond your reach, it's actually very relevant, and we want to be part of this discussion. We want to be part of it early on, and we want to help and be part of this standard setting in bringing the new economic model to Thailand and the APEC economies. So I'll leave it there for now, and open for discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khun Kusem. Talking about the sense of relevance, you're very, very good to end on that, because I want to bring us to Khun Achiraya next. She's a CEO and co-founder of Hypesters, which is a travel social enterprise. Maybe you can start off by actually tell us, the audience, what is Hypesters, and in terms of social enterprise, a business like yourself, I mean, what is the relevance of APEC? Like, how can you benefit from APEC? Thank you.
Sawadee. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashi, just like when you sneeze, Ashi. So that's my name. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an impact travel company called Hypesters. So today I'm very excited to meeting you all, and also thank you, APEC, and the delegates to having me here today. So I will be sharing my view as a business owner, and also as someone who working in the tourism industry, which is one of the sectors that's heavily affected by the COVID situation. So yeah, a little bit about Hypesters. I started Hypesters 8 years ago, when I still don't have tinka, the crawl on my eyes. But I started with Hypesters because my family owned a travel business. I was born, and my mom loves to sending me out and travel around Thailand, and I see the precious cultures are dying and not being supported enough, and the artisan who doing what they love don't earn enough income to make a living, and the new generation doesn't want to continue because they rather work in a 7-Eleven or drive taxi that would earn more. So I want to use my background and experience in business, and my sister is in impact and law, to create a social enterprise to use tourism as one of the ways to help preserve the disappearing culture, but not just freezing them in the refrigerator, bringing in our creative ideas and innovation to flourish the cultures to the next generation. So we want to also empowering and training the local artisans to have the skills that they need, such as entrepreneurship, storytelling, tourism management, for them to be ready to welcome travelers from around the world. So what we do, so before COVID, a lot of our product and service are based largely on trips. So we do trip for corporations or we call FIT, so independent travelers, like if you travel with your friends or your family. So those are the large majority, and also including the CSR impact program for corporation. And a lot has changed since COVID, as you know, tourism for us, 80% of the customers are from abroad. So when COVID happened, it's like, whoops, gone, oopsie daisy, 80%. So we have to quickly shift our business strategy and execution. So these days, we are lucky that we use our experience and expertise in sustainable tourism, community training, product development, and we do a lot of consulting. Yeah. So looking on the bright side, it's opening up a new channel and segue of the new market and new clients for us as well. And yes, so we've been open for almost 10 years, and we're lucky and fortunate to be receiving awards from not just domestic, but also on an international level, and welcome travelers from around the world. So that's pretty much about Hivesters. And so I want to share with you from my personal experience, and also knowing with my friends and colleagues in the tourism industry of our point of view and what we see are the opportunities and challenge with APEC. So far, so good? Okay, you with me. Not much wine yet. I think with the pandemic that happened, it impacted everyone. Probably you know that, not including you. And I think in tourism point of view, it's welcome to the new era of travel, the new way that we travel. And it's the old way, I don't think we're gonna go back again. And especially like these days with, if the lockdown, and most of us are able to live and work anywhere, and it changed the dynamic of the way we live and we work. There's a new demand of employee these days, especially like the new generation, the young talent, that they want mobility, they want to have freedom, they want to have flexibility in their life and their work. And this impacts the way that people live and work, and also leading to tourism also. And we can see that when people can work anywhere, they can travel and live and work. So this impact in the way that, instead of just, if you come from Europe, you have like 1 month or 2 weeks for vacation. You might come to Thailand for 2 weeks. But these days you can stay as long as your visa allows, and you not just come on just yourself and your girlfriend or your wife, but you come with the whole family, and so that's opened a new opportunity also to the destination, that it might not just only be tourism, but include into other business sector as well. So for instance, if your family come and live and work in Thailand, it's not just you renting a house, your kids go to school, what international school will be open, etc., etc. And a lot of people are going to the lesser known city, the indie, the hipster cities, and also the city that it might not be as much popular, but it's open, it's offered the environment, the way of living, and also the cost of spending will be less. So you will see the trends that travelers are going to the lesser known cities because they have a lot more time. And also the way that we work with COVID, a lot of hours spent on Zoom, and these days we are still spending time on Zoom too. And this also create the change for the corporations also. There will be less demand in office building, so the real estate will be impact on this. So the rental space, maybe for instance, you rent for 2 floors, but maybe these days with the COVID since the employee can work from home, it will be from 2 down to 1. Yeah. And also with business trip, before always have to, okay, let's go fly to maybe like for a quick flight to Singapore for a meeting and then come back. But these days you can, everyone's happy and okay with doing via Zoom. So you will probably see the trends of the less numbers of business trips that will be happening, and it will also impact in the bottom line for the business also. But maybe there's a good side for the change that we see, that you can work at home, but there's also a big impact on the mental health also. I'm not sure if you feel, but I do feel, because I love meeting people and my team, and working online at home, you can feel like it's isolated, it's lonely, and disconnection. So people are looking for more and more of connection, and that's impact when they travel also. So these days when they travel, it's not just seeing things, not just taking photos, and but it will be more that they want to connect with the destination that they visit. They want to connect with the culture, connect with the people, learn more, and instead of just going to the main touristic place, they would go to the lesser known, maybe the food hub that locals go to, visit the local mom and pop shops. So this, what about with tourism? It meaning that the income will be spreading to the locals who are in that destination. And for the opportunities, so these are some of the highlights that I think might be, a good opportunities that we can see, especially in tourism. So if there's an opportunity that APEC can ease the mobility of people in the regions to live and to work, not just a person, but also their family also when they have to move abroad. And also this also a great way, also an opportunity for us to attract good talents, not just in Thailand, but you can attract great talents from various countries and creating and grow the regions to be competitive. And for business travel, it's not just go and have a meeting, right? You can offer opportunities. How can the business travel in APEC, how to ease the mobility between corporations? Business travel here will not just meeting, but it's where people come to work and to meet after so many Zoom meetings. All of a sudden, 1 quarter, let's come and work and meet and connect and learn more together. So these are actually the real example of, but it's also before COVID. So they just not just only come and meeting, but they come and to work together and have a team building in local community. And this is how the income spreading to the local and creating the impact and help preserve the culture. And also, it's also an opportunity to foster learning and connection across region. So this can be an impact through not just only like culture or tourism or business connections or education, that we can foster the relationship and the connection. So to give you a concrete example, I share with you my personal experience, that I was very lucky to be selected by the Asia-New Zealand Foundation. Anyone from New Zealand here? Yay, Kiwi! Hi, I cannot speak Maori yet. So Asia-New Zealand Foundation is a non-profit organization based in New Zealand, and their mission is to have Kiwis to thrive in Asia. So I was lucky that I was invited to be part of the young entrepreneurs in Asia to learn more about tourism and sustainable tourism in New Zealand. So there were many members from across the region. So this is me, ate too much of the yummy food. And like members from like Vietnam, Philippines, one from Thailand, Malaysia, many people. And we joining like almost 2 weeks trip in New Zealand from north to the south, yeah. So what I really like the program. The mission is to have us to learn and connect with people in the tourism industry in New Zealand. So we had a chance to meet a lot of entrepreneurs and tech startups, and also the local governance in New Zealand also. So we met many, so as you see in the photos, like CEO of different tourism companies and startups. And we also have a chance to on a panel to share about our stories, our business, and connect with the people in tourism industry in New Zealand. And every night, almost every night, there's a business networking meeting with the people in different cities when we had a trip. And then we visit the New Zealand Tourism Board, and we visit how you call, National Tourism Award in New Zealand. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I had a chance to meet a lot of those people who won the award, and I learned from them what did they do, why their business idea is so great. And they also did a PR on each of us as well, so that we were known also and built business connection in the country. And apart from that, we had a great chance to learn about sustainable tourism in New Zealand. We visit different places. For instance, this is where the cultural preservation, so we learn how the culture is being preserved and how the new generation, how do we make them, the new generation, to be interested and to share this culture to, in the futures. Or learn about the culture of the Maori food. And this memory is very embedded in me, and it helped me grow. And I think it's one of the way for, as a APEC, also an opportunity for have people like me or like others who are on ground to impact from this and to create opportunities for others. So last but not least, just a little bit about the challenge that I think I see for the APEC. First is the speed. How can we make the execution as quick and that we not fall behind the bandwagon? And second, how do we ease the cross-border travel? I'm sharing you from my experience working with my clients, travelers. So these are there are still a lot of differences in laws, regulation when people travel, and it creates a lot of confusion. And a lot of the time, it's hindered them to take a trip to the destination. So if we can facilitate the law and regulation to simple and if as harmonious as possible in the region, that would be very helpful. Also, lastly, I think it's very important. How do we grow for APEC in a sustainable way? Yeah, in a way that doesn't create the harmful for the environment, creating impact for the social, the culture. How do we preserve that and improve the livelihood and economics to the locals across the regions? Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much, Kun Achi. Before, if there's anyone interested in asking a question, please go to the microphone at the back of the room. Identify yourself and also identify who you want to ask question. We have actually a lot of questions from online, so I'm going to start with that before we go for the question from here. There's one viewer called Ratchakit Tanya Jaratpon who've asked 3 questions. So I'm going to read it out. I think the first question is probably applicable to everyone. Second one maybe to the MFA, and the third one might be Kun Achi and others. So it seems that everyone here has talked about APEC being kind of playing a crucial role in bouncing the world back from the coronavirus pandemic. But now we're seeing unprecedented rise of the new Omicron variant, and there's also a possibility of future ones evolving in the world, as the WHO said. and that, they said that the COVID-19 pandemic will not actually ending soon. Will these variants be an obstacle for APEC in 2022 in order to conclude all intended key deliverables? So that's one question. The second one is a follow-up. Will the APEC, apart from the local competition that the MFA launched, are there going to be a forum for Thai and members' economies youth to engage and observe APEC 2022? I think it's a very good question. This person is linking that to, like, for example, the youth interface with ASEAN leaders in 2019, for example. And of course, the third one, Thailand tourism industry mainly relies on foreign tourists. Will Thailand and APEC economies talk about resilient approach to sustainable tourism that all APEC economies should learn from the current pandemic? Should any preparatory regulations be concluded to cope with future pandemics? I mean, I think actually this applies to both government and private sector on that respect. So I think we'll start with the first one, sort of straightforward. Will the ongoing pandemic interrupt key deliverables? Please, anyone can go first. Okay, go. Please.
Let me take the microphone first. I think what we are designed to be the main outcomes of APEC 22 is basically what we want to address the current economic situation caused by the coronavirus pandemic. So you can see from the trade and investment, from connectivity agenda, and from sustainability, we just want to make sure that, of course, I do agree that APEC, will not be the one to pull the region out of this crisis. But we are going to make sure that the process that we have is going to make, more or less a good impact on how we deal with all those questions. I don't think the Omicron disruption in itself will be an obstacle to the APEC conversation. But on the other hand, the Omicron situation or the coronavirus situation is, I think, it's the reason why we are here and talk about stuff that we need to do going forward. Allow me to address perhaps the second question. If I may, just a short question. We have this, very good question indeed. There will be a forum in November in parallel with the leaders meeting. It will be a 5-day affair driven by the Youth Secretariat, APEC Youth Secretariat based in Singapore, in collaboration, of course, with all the APEC economies. So we are having a process of selecting youth across the region to take part in this week-long activities in Thailand. The process will kickstart, I think, around middle of this year. And it will be, of course, a huge part of the APEC conversation come November.
Thank you, Kob. Anyone else want to take a stab on the 3 questions? I think maybe the tourism. I mean, there's a follow-up from Claire Hu on tourism as well. How can Thailand strengthen other industries and move away from reliance on tourism, which is particularly vulnerable? I'm sorry, Kunachi, I know that your core business is tourism, but maybe you can talk about that as well. And of course, Kun Kasem said as well, I mean, in terms of, looking at the sort of the macro. And see, the other question from the same person, Claire Hu, how can Thailand fix the issue of social stratification that, and it is about inclusiveness, where the majority of population in rural areas beyond Bangkok, and how can they thrive from something like APEC? Again, I mean, you already answered the question about COVID disruption and the youth forum, but this tourism and so the broader look at sort of inclusiveness, I mean, all 4 of you can actually answer. Anyone would like to go first? Okay,
I'd like to respond to the first question from before. I think the pandemic it's going to be with us for a long time. I think we better learn how to live with this soon. We cannot let this be an obstacle to how we are going about our lives. And this is the reason why the Thai championship year for APEC, we want to do all the meetings in person to show how we want to overcome as much as we can, although there are still variants after variants, and this will not be the last pandemic that we will see. But we should learn how to live with this, and I think vaccines has been a solution, as shown in many countries. There are increased cases, but because of vaccines, the cases are not severe. And I think we need to get that kind of mindset going to let people know that we shouldn't be totally afraid and lock everything down and not move on with what we have to do. I think things will still go on. On youth network, I think we at the Thai Chambers and the the Joint Standing Committee on the Commerce Industry and Making the Private Sector, we have our youth network that I'm very glad to hear that we have a youth forum coming alongside with APEC in November. And I think we'll be definitely working together with them. We have a lot of wonderful cases in the province, in the different provincial chambers that we would like to showcase. And I think we should bring these people to come onto the discussion. And that brings us to the inclusiveness. I think it's event like this that we need to get out and let more people aware of the kind of thing that we are having when we're working here, the kind of discussion that we're having. How do we bring them onto the mainstream of new kind of agricultural? How do we bring them on board of the new kind of tourism industries that they need to understand the way forward, the way not to abuse the environment, the way to select and screen and limit the number of visitors to certain sites to make sure that the sustainability of those sites are kept. I think these are the things that we need to do more work on, trying to reach out to the provinces. I think that is the main thing. People are very comfortable in their own zone, and they do not want to try and change things. But the world will change them. And the one main thing is technology, as we can see. I mean, first time when you start ordering food online, and people are not comfortable with that. But now it's the main thing. Everybody does that. How do you order a cab? How do you order food? How do you order anything online? I think these are the kind of thing that will slowly trickle down through the adoption of technology and wide use of technology. I think I've covered that.
Anyone want to take please?
Yes. For us, we view that the pandemic actually kind of provoked the new discussions on trade and related issues. So it's not really kind of the obstacle, but it's kind of challenging for us to see the new issues involved with the trade, and it also make us see the importance of going towards the sustainability and resiliency. So thank you.
Kunachi, I guess the tourism question weighs heavy.
Yes,
I mean, reliance on foreign tourism and way forward and that sort of thing. You think you touch upon it in your presentation, but maybe you can elaborate more.
Yeah, I think actually talking from my personal experience, because a large majority of our income were based on international travelers, and I think these days we in the tourism industry have learned that you cannot rely on a certain market for sustainable, right? And it's like when you buy stocks, you have to manage the risks in your portfolio to shed away if anything happen. Same thing goes when you run business, particularly in my case is tourism. So it was a big learning curve for me that I cannot just serve in one market. I have to innovate the products to serve different clienteles in different segments. So I think for us these days we have the product for international travelers and we have the product for domestic clients. Each of them prefer different things. And I think it's a way that it's opening the new market and to be more risk averse. But I think as an overview of the tourism industry, change takes time. I remember back 8 years ago when I first started Hive Stars, no one really know the word sustainable travel. Like when for example, I talk to my mom like, what the heck is that? What are you gonna do? Will you work and, be poor? Yeah, true story, don't tell my mom. But these days, a lot more people know the word sustainable tourism. And I think that thing takes 8 years, and I think it takes a lot of time for the industry, for the Thai tourism industry to expand, to the balance, to manage the balance between international and domestic travelers. And also, very long stories, like if you want to mitigate the risks, it's also meaning that the root of the pillar of the tourism industry have to be strong also. For instance, if you say, oh, we want sustainable tourism to bring income to the local in the community, but have to go back to the root. How can we equip the local in the community to be ready with the skill set have to welcome travelers? So that the long stories, how do we train and support them for them to be ready? Not just like giving them fish, but teach them how to fish and be able to sustain on their own. Yeah, so.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's several more questions. If not, I'll do the online ones again. So these are from the MFA platforms. The first one is from Annie Bright. How about CPTPP? What's the role of Thailand regarding CPTPP? I guess in a broader sense of sort of free trade and the architecture and all that. Anyone would like to take a stab? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Commerce? Of course, there's always a topical question.
Thank you. I think yes. I think Thailand has expressed her interest in the CPTP for some times, and we view that CPTP is we recognize it as a very high standard FTA, and we know that in the future the trend of the FTAs will be a high standard ones. So yes, we are studying on the CPTPP, and also we are also study or embark on the discussions on the new FTAs with other regions of the world, not only the CPTPP. And yes, and we know that there are a lot that we have to prepare ourselves. If in the future we are going to be members or to initiate FTAs with such a high standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, DG.
If I may add to Kun Chidanya, if I remember correctly, our Prime Minister mentioned about CPTPP back in November 2015. That was quite a long time ago, and even before that, I remember that colleagues from Commerce Ministry had already started their studies on the pros and cons of TPP, as it used to be before CPTPP. The thing is, there will be, and there are issues that divide public opinions. And the keyword is whether or not we are ready for such a high, a standard trade agreement. I think what my colleague from Commerce Ministry had said. Obviously, we are in the process. We have been in this process for a number of years. We thought that we almost got where we supposed to be a couple of years ago. But then, there are groups, representatives from sectors across the our business spectrum who have voiced concern, and that has opened a lot of conversation domestically. I think this is part of the reason why, back to APEC, we would like to take this opportunity to perhaps revisit the whole idea of, a free trade agreement among Asia-Pacific nations again. Perhaps we could bring out those, observations, recommendations from all those private sectors to, onto the table and join hands with our APEC economies in addressing what kind of, an FTA that we want it to be post-COVID-19. So I think CPTPP is going to be a long way to go. A lot of stuff that we have discussed in the process. It's not just about being in the CPTPP itself, but it's about Thailand being among all those high standards FTAs, across the continents that we need to ask ourselves if we are that ready at this point. And a refreshed conversation on FTAP will be perhaps providing some sort of an answer, if you will, for us to come and think about whether or not it's worth to explore the CPTPP option.
Thank you. Any further question? Director General, please.
Elaborate a little further. Could you elaborate a little further on FTAP? I think we discussed this before when we doing our preparation for APEC. I think a lot of people are wondering whether APEC and Thailand will come up with anything concrete on free trade. That's the crux of the matter of APEC. Thank you.
Allow me to address this question first, and perhaps my colleague from Commerce can add on. As she said, this is 2022 is not going to be an end in itself. We are not going to start any negotiation on any agreement. What we are going to do in the next 3 to 4 months is to basically to ask around APEC economies what kind of FTA that we want to see. Of course, there will be a huge gap in opinions among member economies. Certain members prefer certain kind of FTA, certain members prefer a different kind of FTA. What we want to do is to provide a platform for us to collectively address this FTA issue. As my colleague said, the idea of FTAP was floated around, I think, 2003, around the time that Thailand was hosting APEC the last time. And it has taken like almost 20 years until this very point, the APEC, economies have not been able to agree on any fixed formula on the right kind of FTA that we want us to do. So what will happen in 2022? And of course, part of the MRT ministerial outcome is that hopefully we are going to have or to reach a good level of conclusion of the shape of ideal FTA that we want it to be, the composition of that particular FTA that we want it to be, without starting any formal negotiations.
Actually, the same as has been stated by the Director General. We view that what we are going to do is a building block. We are not going to see the FTAP as the immediate destination that we want to reach within this year. So we see it as the journey, but we see the contributions from this journey. And I think that to revisit or to initiate the discussions on the FTAP, with the new situations, it would just open, the new concept, the new elements in the FTAP. So it's a kind of the development of the FTAP, that has been mentioned for at least almost more than 10 years, and we see that that's what we want to see, that would at least happen in this year.
Thank you. Please.
Just a quick note. I think from the private sector side, I think we would like to be party to as many FTAs as we can. I think the finalization of it is too early to tell. But you don't join the process, you will never know what we have to adopt or restructure or change, or what sectors will fall out. We have a broad idea, but until we are in it, we will not make the necessary adjustment. If we don't join, does it mean it's better off? We will not, because everyone else will start joining and we'll be losing out. So I think from the trade and investment perspective, we would like to be part of as many FTAs as we can, if it doesn't hurt us. But for CPTPP, it's too early to tell, and we're not in the process yet. Thank you.
There's a practical question from one of the viewers online about the COVID testing regime for travelers. For business travel, PRC tests on the 5th day and the 12 hours wait may discourage many travelers. For APEC delegates, would they have to miss the 1 day for work for the same reason, or could ATK test be considered for the 5th day instead? I mean, it's a fair question. I know that things keep changing in Thailand, but any response? Right now, I guess that's the regime at the moment, right?
No, really. I think it's obvious to see that all incoming international travelers will need to follow the laws and regulations. Simply as that. Perhaps I'm not the very best person to answer this question, but we do give priorities, top priority to safety, to save and to the safety and health of all the participants.
Thank you. We have time for maybe one more question, and any from the audience here? If not, there's a few more from online audience, so I'm just going to go ahead. This one is, I'm going to kind of reshape my own question into this one as well. The actual question is, comment on Thailand's role within APEC and among the US-China relations. I was involved in APEC, the last time Thailand hosted APEC. I was a small cog in the MFA wheel, but I remember that in that particular meeting, we had the SARS pandemic starting in the middle of the year, and all the APEC economies had a rush health ministry meeting and all this sort of stuff, which was amazing. But now we're in sort of 2 years on from the pandemic, and in a much heavier shadow, a much deeper shadow casting the geopolitics, the situation in Europe, the situation in Asia as well. What is Thailand's role in it, and what can we do in this climate?
I guess I'll have to answer that question.
Sure.
I think it is very obvious that difference in opinions will show eventually. There will be, a widened gap of positions of how economies approach APEC agenda. But I do not think that the outside factor, put it this way, will change so much the core principle of why economies apply to join APEC in the first place. I have to be honest with you. I have had limited experience in the APEC conversation, just over 2 years. But I reckon that first and foremost, APEC economies tend to stick to the core principles of APEC without taking into account the competitive views and positions that taken place outside APEC conversation. So it's a yes or no kind of answer. Yes, I think we are going to feel a certain level of impact on the mood, and feeling among economies during the process. But a big no to any change to the the core interests of APEC economies collectively.
Okay. Well, I know our time is up, but if any of the panelists have any parting remarks, feel free to do so now. Anyone? Any?
Just a quick word on the other thing that I neglected to mention in the beginning is for APEC, we are also responsible for the APEC CEO Summit end of this year, which is a gathering of, we're expecting over 2,000 participants, in-person meeting alongside with the Leaders Summit in November. And I think we will see if the way we see it, the way we planned it, the leaders are expected to show up at the Leaders Summit because it's been long overdue meeting of the major leaders of APEC communities. And if the leaders do come, the delegations will be quite substantial. And I think we will see a lot of benefits as we are putting together different promotion that we want to showcase for Thailand on the business side towards the CEO Summit. So I think this is a space to look out and stay tuned. Thank you.
Anything?
Yeah, stay tuned is the word. And I like what Kun Kasem said just a few moments ago. Mindset is the keyword. I think 2022 it's all about mindset. If you look across what we are presenting, the simple logic is how to deal with the existing mindset, how to make sure that APEC can go beyond trade, investment, facilitation to something extra than we have done before. That is to make APEC more sustained, to make APEC more relevant to the world around us, and to make sure that APEC is here to stay. It's not going to be easy. APEC has achieved certain amount of targets in the past 30 years or so, but there is a good number of targets that we have yet to achieve. Past host economies, be they New Zealand, Malaysia before that, and Chile, of course, we have all tried our utmost to make sure that APEC is back in the business, which is not easy, given the pandemic situation. But 2022 is about changing the mindset inside and outside APEC.
Well, there you go, folks. I would like to thank all our excellent panelists for the very lively discussion on what is going to be a very important year for Thailand this year. I think this is only the beginning of the conversation. I think throughout the year we will still have many issues to explore, whether it's from other APEC economies, whether it's from the private sector, whether it's from other SMEs or social enterprises in other areas. So on behalf of the FCCT, I would like to say that we want to continue this conversation going through this year. Just a quick notes from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please follow the hashtag APEC 2022 Thailand in one word on their various platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for updates and news about all that is happening on APEC this year. Again, on behalf of the Foreign Correspondent Club of Thailand, I would like to thank you, all our panelists, and thanks the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for help putting together this very valuable panel discussion. On that note, thank you everyone. Good evening and take care. สวัสดีครับ